To the Prime Minister. Question number 1, Mr. John Butterfield.
Mr. Speaker, sir, this morning I presided at a meeting of the Cabinet and had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall be having further meetings later today.
Butterfield.
Join with me in welcoming the decision of Monsieur Jacques Delors, the President of the European Commission, in rejecting the proposal for new labour laws as part of the social charter of the European Community. Doesn't it show that she was right in being the first to speak out against these damaging proposals, despite the fact that they were being proposed so enthusiastically by the party opposite and their socialist allies? And isn't it a shame, Mr. Speaker, that when this was first reported in the national newspapers, that when it was first reported in the national newspapers, it made front page when they said my right honourable friend was isolated, whereas now, Mr. Speaker, it only makes page 11.
Oh! Order! Order!
Mr. Speaker, I join with my honourable friend in being very grateful that greater realism and common sense is coming into Brussels. It will be quite absurd to create a common market and then tie it up with bureaucracy and socialism. With regard to sometimes being isolated, as we were on the social charter, we in fact got the right result then, and many people who criticised us at that time are now taking our view now that we were right.
Roy Hatterslip.
Mr. Speaker, following the tragic events in Iraq earlier today, may I make it clear that the opposition will support the government in taking the strongest possible action consistent with international law in response to the barbaric execution of Mr. Farzad Bazov. We are, of course, aware of the importance of doing all we can to protect Mrs. Daphne Parish and Mr. Ian Richter, but the government must, by its actions as well as its words, to some of us who regard this as a rather grave matter, Mr. Speaker, the government must, as I'm sure the Prime Minister agrees, by actions as well as words, express the sense of outrage which is felt throughout the country.
Mr. Speaker, I agree with the right honourable gentleman. This is a very, very grave and serious matter. The Iraqi government's action is an act of barbarism, which is deeply repugnant to all civilized people. We extend our sympathy to Mr. Bazov's family and colleagues. I agree that we must consider Mrs. Parish, who is still there in prison, and also Mr. Richter, on whose behalf we have made many representations. I think the right honourable gentleman will know that my right honourable friend, the Foreign Secretary, will be making a statement after questions, and I think the further details should be left to that.
To Humphrey Maylands.
I refer my honourable friend to the reply that I gave some moments ago.
Maylands.
Mr. Speaker, does my right honourable friend share my disappointment at the decision of the Irish Supreme Court to release two convicted IRA terrorists? Does she further agree that this could be very damaging to the Anglo-Irish agreement? And does she further agree that this action is an unjustified attack and slur on the Northern Irish prison system?
Mr. Speaker, I very much agree with my honourable friend. The suggestion that anyone extradited to Northern Ireland would be maltreated is grossly offensive and totally unjustified. The Northern Irish Prison Service are a dedicated and courageous group doing a very difficult job. I fear that such a judgment may encourage terrorists to the view that they will probably find a safe haven in the Republic of Ireland, and that is very serious.
Daffyd Ellis Thomas.
3, sir.
I refer the honourable gentleman to the reply which I gave some moments ago.
Thomas.
Does the Prime Minister know that she recently scored 66% in a popularity poll in Lithuania?
Order. Order. What's the question, please?
Well, she...
will she reciprocate this affection by declaring her support for the right of the Lithuanian people to negotiate their independence and their return to full statehood?
Speaker, I'm very pleased to hear the news which the honourable gentleman gave the House. Those people, along with many others, are fighting socialism. They know the poverty of socialism, and they're trying to get rid of it. The matter now must be taken up in discussions with President Gorbachev, but I hope the outcome will be satisfactory to everyone.
Mr. James Arbuthnot.
I refer my honourable friend to the reply which I gave some moments ago.
Arbuthnot.
Is my right honourable friend aware that this government's determination to keep its spending under control is one of the factors which keeps public investment flooding into this country? And since the last thing we want in this country is to call in the IMF to bail us out again, as happened under Labour, will she reaffirm that she intends to stick to her courageous line?
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I agree with my honourable friend that we get a great deal of inward investment both from Germany and from Japan and other investors because they know that this government will continue to pursue sound economic policies, continue to have the right industrial law, continue in fact to resist nationalisation and continue to privatise further industries, and will continue to have lower tax rates than we've seen at any time since before the last war. All of these things are vital to investors, and they're vital to the prosperity of this country.
Mr. Dave Nellist. Order.
Would the Prime Minister reconsider her reply during Tuesday's question time that not paying the poll tax is, I quote, anti-democratic and a bad example to set to all young people in this country? Does she not realise that 42.5% of Glasgow, that's over 205,000 people, are not paying the poll tax, and that they and those millions who are about to join them in England and Wales feel deeply insulted by her remarks because it's for their children and for their families that those who can't pay won't pay, and I and others on this side of the chamber are proud to stand alongside those people in Scotland.
Mr. Speaker, deliberately to disobey the law properly passed through Parliament in all its stages is thoroughly anti-democratic, thoroughly contrary to a rule of law, and leads to all of those acts of dictatorship against which this House stands firmly against. I repeat what I said previously. It is anti-democratic and anti the rule of law, gives a bad example to children, a bad example to young people, and should never be propounded from this House.
William Cash.
I refer my honourable friend to the reply which I gave some moments ago.
Cash.
My right honourable friend noted in Staffordshire that the Labour-controlled county council, which runs the education of that county, has managed to produce results which show that 11% of all those who leave school do so without having any educational qualifications whatsoever. And is it not in my right honourable friend's mind that we should be sure to make certain that the people of Staffordshire closely examine the way in which the county council runs its affairs, and to make sure that they get the retribution they deserve in the forthcoming election?
Mr. Speaker, I agree with my honourable friend that whether it's government, county council government or district council government, we all have a duty to get best value for money, whether it be out of community charge or out of the taxpayers' money. And the people who are big spenders often do not get best value for money and do not get the best value for education or other services. Our community charge plans will enable people to scrutinise their local council very much more competently and see that their money is well spent, and to take action if it isn't, if the community charge is too high. And our education reforms will give parents a good deal more say over the education of their children and enable them to see how well they're doing. Both are thoroughly to be recommended.
Mr. Harry Cohen. Mr. Six.
I refer the honourable gentleman to the reply which I gave some moments ago.
Mr. Harry Cohen.
The Prime Minister told me last week that home repossessions were 1/3 of 1%, but hasn't the Council of Mortgage Lenders said that those with 6 to 12 months arrears has risen 29%, and those with 2 to 6 months arrears is 500,000 families? Isn't the government's high interest rate policies to blame, and are they going to do anything about it in next week's budget? Or shouldn't new buyers have been warned that they're only homeowners on borrowed time?
Mr. Speaker, as I indicated last week, I think, to the honourable gentleman, over 99% of people are able to pay their mortgages in the normal way. 99.2%, I think it is right now. Yes, of course, some people are in difficulty. I think if they're in difficulty with building societies, they will find in most cases the building societies will extend the mortgage or make other arrangements to enable them properly to pay the mortgage, and that is frequently done. With regard, of course, to the value of the asset for which they're getting the mortgage, it is frequently the case that the value of the asset has gone up very considerably since they first took out the mortgage.
Dame Elaine Kennett-Bowman.
Right honourable friend aware that in the northwest, industry has undergone a resurgence since she took office, as a result of which unemployment has fallen very substantially, not least in my own constituency of Lancaster, where it fell by 0.4% in this last month alone.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, I agree with my honourable friend. Industry is far stronger now. Restrictive practices have gone. The rate of investment is very much higher in industry. Exports are going up. And today's news from the unemployment front is that we have more jobs than ever before, very nearly 27 million, and that we have one of the lowest unemployment rates in Europe. Bearing in mind, on the day when unemployment figures were used to be announced, that side of the House was first to get up one after the other to ask about them. They never ask about them now because unemployment is one of the lowest in Europe, and because we've created more jobs than they have. That tells its own story.
Flynn.
The honourable gentleman to the reply which I gave some moments ago.
Flynn.
Prime Minister joined Lawtrow and independent consultants in denouncing the wickedly dishonest advertising and overselling of personal pensions. Already over 1 million people are likely to be worse off because they've been misled and they've taken the government bribe and left Serbs. Will the Prime Minister guarantee that when the time is right for those cheated million to return to Serbs, there will be a full-blooded government advertising campaign to inform them of the truth?
Speaker, I totally reject the honourable gentleman's premise and the language in which he expressed it. People are perfectly free to take out personal pensions, and they take a burden off Serbs, which is why they get a certain amount from it when setting up pensions. Many, many people have exercised their choice. I recognise that choice is anathema to socialism, which is why socialism, when it comes to the time, will be rejected in this part of Europe as it has been in Eastern Europe.
David Gilroy-Bevan. Mr. Gilroy-Bevan. Mr. Paul Marland. Mr. Marland. Miss Alice Mann.
I refer the honourable lady to the reply which I gave some moments ago.
Prime Minister aware that the privatised British Telecom is charging £80 for people in certain areas before they will install a telephone. Does she think this is a good advert for the privatised system because they don't get that £80 back until they've paid 4 consecutive bills? Isn't that a disgrace, and weren't they better when it was public?
Speaker, if the honourable lady looks at the record of British Telecom since they have been privatised, she'll find they're giving a very much better service by virtue of by virtue of the regulatory regime. They have not been able to increase their prices by anything like the amount of inflation, and therefore, in real terms, the prices have gone down since privatization. That is good news for all telephone holders.
Statement, Mr. Secretary Hurd.